Y'all really thought we weren't going to podcast today. Are you freaking kidding me? Of course we are. Oh, peasants. It's a holiday. That doesn't matter to us. We don't care. We got to
We
work
still
anyways.
walk.
Although Isaiah did call me this morning and I was like, dude, it's New Year's Eve. Like you said we had off like 2 weeks ago. What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I forgot it's a holiday. And I was like, I'll work. Um, so yeah, so I'm in work mode now. I got a haircut, as you guys can tell. Shout out Fabi, Isaiah's
You look
sister.
beautiful.
She's great. Thanks, man. And I have a beard. Who knows if I'll keep it, but
Very handsome.
Isaiah
I
and I
can't
have,
wait to see you today.
wait, we gonna hang out today?
No, we're not. We're not. That was for the joke. It was for the joke.
Okay. I was like, well, I didn't know we were hanging out today. But
I'm
Isaiah
on
and I,
coffee, like actual caffeine.
yeah,
It
dude, he's
feels
feeling good.
beautiful.
He's feeling wired.
Yeah.
So we had a long, good chit chat today. We went and talked about. These are so funny. Getting these stupid texts about buying cars. I don't want another car, fools. But we talked about the NBA. We talked about its issues, and then we started chit chatting about comments. And Isaiah was like, "Hey, I saw this comment, John. I want to know what you think." So Isaiah, go ahead, read the comment. And then he already read it to me, and I was like, "Oh, I have a lot of thoughts about this." And I really,
Shout out to
whenever I see like a hateful comment, it really just tickles my. I don't want to say what I want to say. Tickles my pickle. It really fires me up, man. It really grinds my gears.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to @Nick Lassie. One thing is really strange. It's quite obvious that squat and power clean is the key movement to increase your vertical. Why mess around with triphasic stuff? Just do a progression towards a 5 to 10 kilo increase in clean and squat, and you will actually jump 51 to 52 inches. So, John,
All right,
why not?
Nick.
Why not just clean and squat?
I'm going to answer your question with another question, Nick. There's a whole cohort of athletes that do this exact thing that you suggested. There's actually a whole sport based around it. It's called weightlifting. And why don't weightlifters, people who jump regularly, and I would know because I've worked in the highest level of their cohorts, individuals, they do a lot of jumping, whether box jumps or some will do plyos, but a lot of box jumping, a lot of approach 2-foot jumping. Why do they not have a 51-inch vertical? By your logic, if that's the only thing that matters, they should just go and jump 51 inches or 52 inches, just a logical progression. Why do anything else? Well, I think it's very apparent or very obvious that there are other things that matter. It's not just your power clean and not just your squat. Just because the one study that looked at 3 movements or 4 movements that we shared with you, that is going to bias which movements seem the most important, but it doesn't tell the full picture. You could more or less come to a confirmation bias of, oh, well, we looked at this one thing and it was a quote unquote study or data that we posted, and it demonstrates that these are the biggest predictors of your vertical jump. That's not even necessarily true because we didn't look at every other important variable. We just included some key lifts that we felt were important, but we didn't look at tendon stiffness. That's really important. We didn't look at the nervous system or other measures of it. That's really important. We didn't look at sprint times. That's pretty important. Did we even look at height and body weight and BMI? Did we even look at BMI, or was it just weight?
Or what?
Height for the Sawyer study.
Oh, no, we didn't look at BMI, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty important. Like, there's a lot of other. I mean, some of those metrics are taken into account.
I
But
also squatted. I only squatted in power clean for years.
yeah, and jumped. Because
Yeah.
then your next argument might be, well, of course you need to do more approach jumps, so they have bad technique. Okay, well, we've seen people do that as well. I would argue that that's basically what I did last year in its entirety. I was talking to Ben Mockness, and I was like, yeah, last year was mega concentric dominant because I had a deficit there and I had to work on it. So I got my front squat up to all-time highs, got my back squat up to all-time highs, RDL up to all-time highs, power clean up to all-time highs, and I was not jumping my highest. Then I even went as far to unload to make sure that it wasn't fatigue related. And I still did not jump my absolute highest, not off 1 or off 2, actually. And I think it goes to show you that there are other more important variables. Vertical jump training is not simple. That's the beauty of it. It's complex. And It may sound like I'm attacking you, but I'm not. This is just my. You ever see like Peyton Manning, and he calls himself Debating Manning? This is Debating Manning out. All right, and I think that it's very apparent that there are other more complex systems at play here. We have something like tendon stiffness that is very complex, very hard to change, and not as linearly modifiable or even predictable when it comes to changes in strength and changes in tendon stiffness and performance as a result. Like that alone as a physiological variable is super complex and so freaking confusing, even for me at times, where I know it's important. I know I have to improve it, but how do I do that in a way where it leads to systematic changes over time and improvements in performance? You can do that for a little while. You can do squat and power clean progressions for a little while and jump, and you can get pretty decent. You can get pretty decent. But if you want to take yourself to another level and you want to be your best self, you have to do other stuff. I would even say those aren't the number one determinants. I would say eccentric strength is probably more of a determinant in performance. I would say that's way more important.
Yeah.
And that is why, and I wouldn't even call it triphasic because triphasic is like, that is a term made up by Cal Dietz that he more or less was like, you need to go from eccentric to isometric to concentric work, and concentric work is the positive work you're doing. It's really important. So that's what you got to do at the end. I don't even agree with that. I think it should go by force, and it should go by which one is the highest and lowest force. And this is literally what Ben and I talked about for probably like, I would say we talked about this for like 4 hours yesterday, 3 hours or something like that on the phone, just specifically about what actually matters. And it's a good question that was posed because it's a challenging one. It's not an easy question to answer. I think some people would just agree with you. They'd be like, you know what, you're right. Why should I do anything else? I probably should just do that. And they would just lean into that and be like, well, that's the best way to do it.
And they'd
But I
probably
can
get
assure
pretty decent, which would further be a confirmation bias.
confirmation bias
'Cause
even more towards it.
that is the problem right there, is thinking like we're concerned with reaching your absolute genetic potential. There is a big confirmation bias I see from good athletes that think because they're good athletes that their training was perfect,
I don't even
that
think
it
it's
was the
that. They
best.
could look at you and incorrectly make a what would you call that? Assumption, right?
Yeah,
Because when do you jump high?
when my squat and power clean are high.
So, oh, well, obviously that's
Yeah,
why, right? And but they ignore all the other data. They just it forms a stronger confirmation bias to them. But they ignore the annuals of history of training athletes that indicates that's not
that's
a
like
hundred like the reason.
Ben Patrick. I remember he emailed me, like, this is maybe like 2 years ago or something like that, and he was making an article on deep squatting and how the best athlete, it was basically a confirmation bias article of every athlete that like he's seen deep squatting and how it's correlated to their performance. But then like when you look at it now, right? Like I could have said yeah. Mind you, I could have, if you would have talked to me in 20, right before, like probably like 2018, right in there, like from when I started up to 2018, I would have thought, yeah, deep squatting is king. It's what you need to do. Everybody needs to do it. And 2023, when I jumped literally the highest in my life, I didn't deep back squat a single bit, not even one rep. Now, actually, I did do one rep
We're not
after.
even doing deep back squats right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there, yeah, you can correlate a lot of things to performance, but it's all confirmation bias, like all of it. And it's so insidious because the athletes can get really good with not perfectly optimized training, but we're not concerned with that. Like we're concerned with what is the best. What is the best way to.
Even then, I think it's like good athletes can get great results. Bad athletes can't.
Yeah.
Bad athletes can't get great results. If
Yeah.
you're a bad athlete like me, you can't get great results by doing that. You
And by
won't.
bad athlete, you mean like bad genetics.
Yeah. Like I'm not predisposed to jump 50 inches. I'm not. I'm not predisposed to be Jamar Chase and clean 315 just because I'm Jamar Chase and I played football most of my life and I can squat a couple days a week and clean a couple days a week and
Yeah.
my max goes up to infinity and beyond. Like,
There's athletes out there that
dude,
literally can
here's a better proposition. How many basketball players in the NBA do you think deep squat and power clean?
Yeah.
Like none.
Why is my camera?
I don't know why it's doing that. I've been noticing that.
You can keep talking.
But I think you could look at baseball players. How many baseball players like deep squat and power clean? And in the same way, I often make this argument is like, well, how much better could they be if they did? I think that maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. There's definitely evidence to indicate that it could be worth doing. And so I think that you could add those variables in and it could be beneficial. What I like about what we do is we're not holding to any one exercise. I think if it were concrete and the evidence indicated that that's the only thing you needed to do, I would probably lean into that more. But I don't think that's the case. I think that there's also massive diminishing returns. Like to assume that you can just be on a progression that's going to magically increase your back squat or front squat by 5 to 10 pounds every 4 months is absurd. That
Yeah.
is not true. Like,
And we're not power lifters. Like, in order for me to increase my squat and clean that much, I would have to eat so much. Like, I would have to basically get fat, only do that in an insanely high volumes, and I bet you my vertical would drop. To do the 10 kilo increase he's talking about, my
he
vertical would
said
drop.
5 to 10 kilos. Is that what he said? I thought it was
Yeah,
5 to 10 pounds. He said 5 to 10 kilos.
yeah.
To be
Like, I
fair,
would my
our progression
vertical
seems to be working very well. Your weight has stayed very low, and
yeah,
your maxes have gone up 5 to 10 kilos every year.
yeah. And not
That's funny.
even, like, if you think I just cleaned 320, a year ago was 315. That was a 5-pound increase, and think about how much cleaning and squatting I did throughout the whole year that, like, I don't know, it's
It's also interesting too because, like, I've worked
steroids.
yeah, steroids. I've worked around some of the best weightlifting coaches in the world. Well, okay, one of the best weightlifting coaches I've ever met. Dude was incredible. Vance Newgard. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant man. Mind you, this is someone that coaches clean athletes. The sport of weightlifting is disgustingly dirty to the point it's like I respect anyone that's willing to dip their toes into that venture because your camera's still doing it. Just zoom out a little bit.
It zoomed out. I don't know what was happening.
It is what it is. But I applaud any weightlifting coach or sprints coach that's willing to dip their toes into that water and venture into the sad, unfortunate world of drug use. There are people that I've heard of that literally just don't do the sport for a little while, athletes, just so they can dope for a couple years so they can compete with these other countries that are like openly doping and just like getting away with it. And the number of athletes each year that get popped is insane. It's like it's like 15 to 20 athletes every year that get popped by WADA and they don't care. All they do is they just reclass the things. And it's like, if you're doing it clean, you have to really be a great coach. And this coach, Vance Newgard, hats off to him. He's done a great job with a lot of the athletes he's coached. He's very sarcastic and can come off as condescending at times. And people sometimes take that the wrong way. But I was fortunate enough to be able to write training that he would look at, or we'd have good training conversations every day at the gym that I was training at for 2 years. Every single day he was there and I was there for 2 to 3 hours, and I would go do my track work, and then I'd walk into the weight room and I'd lift for an hour and a half, and he would be there and all his athletes would be there. And I became friends with all those athletes because we trained together. Even though I was doing something else, Vance was kind enough to let me learn and train under and around those athletes. And they improved because the programming was incredibly good. And it was so dialed in for weightlifting specifically. And he would even pose some of these questions to me. He's like, why not just keep it simple? Like, keep it simple, stupid. Just get stronger. And I'd be like, you make some good points. And then, he kind of would make these same arguments. And we had a lot of good and different types of conversations. But when he does these progressions, the biggest difference I've noticed is one, he's doing more different types of lifts. So he's doing the snatch, he's doing the clean and jerk, and he's doing like other movements. You know what I mean? And we don't necessarily need to do that. And so, if you were to tell them like, hey, all you have to do is get up your power clean and squat, at that point, you're basically a bobsledder, more or less, right?
Yeah.
And those guys are so maybe that's an even better argument. Look at bobsled athletes. Are they the highest jumpers in the world?
Yeah.
No, they're not the highest jumpers in the world. Like, why? Okay, well, I mean, there's other elements to it. You know what I mean? It's not just concentric force. There's a lot of eccentric emphasis. That's probably the number one argument is bobsled is almost entirely concentric. You're taking an object that has a lot of mass or inertia, and you have to move that object over like 30 to 40 meters. And as it generates momentum, you're actually applying downward force with your hands. So that requires less eccentric force because you don't have to brake as much. It's more just concentric dominant, super concentric dominant. That's why their clean is super important. That's why their back squat is super important. Their standing vertical is super important. Their approach vertical doesn't freaking matter. Like some of them have good approach verticals, but it's not very indicative of like their success in the sport.
Yeah.
And even the fastest guys aren't the best bobsledders. They're not because you've got to push the sled. And
Mhm.
sprinting is more eccentrically, like your success is predetermined largely by your eccentric rate of force development and eccentric force capacity. That is well documented in research. And that is largely related to your tendon qualities. This is why Ben and I nerd out about this shit because it's what matters. Like it's why I'm doing lowers at 220 pounds on a single leg on the leg extension machine. Why I'm lowering 600 pounds on one leg on a calf raise machine, or why I'm having Isaiah press 300 pounds downwards and I'm resisting him because it is a major determinant in your success of elastic activity. It is determinant of your tendon properties. It's determinant of your type 2 fibers. It's a determinant of uh, your muscle tendinous unit and it's the mechanisms underlying jump performance, and all of those variables determine your success in jumping. So that is why we do a multi-phase approach. Is
I
that it's
think I think to answer the question, and this goes for anything that you're trying to improve in the athletic world, you just have to look at the laws of adaptation. So it's like, all right, we know that producing a lot of force helps you jump higher, getting stronger helps you jump higher. Squatting and cleaning, however, one, it'll get stale. There's going to be a point of diminishing returns. We know variety helps. That's one argument. Specificity. Squatting and cleaning are pretty general if you look at the demands that jumping requires. Because in jumping, this nifty little thing called the stretch shortening cycle that happens. And we want to address that what happens in that stretch shortening cycle, the eccentric action in the musculotendinous unit, the isometric portion. Like that's what we're trying to address by doing those two things. And there's a why behind everything. Like that comment, I think he said something a little condescending. He's like, "Why do this to just seem smarter than you are?" But there's a why and logic behind everything. And mind you, everything. What's the saying we say with research? Everything is it's not proven. It's
nothing's proven, it's only
it's
supported.
supported. It's supported. Technically, these things are just supported, but we're also testing. Like yeah, we could just do the same old thing, but there's a strong argument that things are going to get stale and we're going to plateau, and there's a stronger argument for trying these methods that we're using.
Because there's resounding evidence that doing the same thing for a long period of time will eventually not work. That is like repeatable. Every
Mhm.
single athlete in the world in any sport, that is the most repeatable. It is essentially a law because it's that repeatable. That is how undisputed diminishing
And
returns
it's
are.
why every other coach and their mom can't improve an athlete's vertical. Like look at how many athletes have gotten to that like upper 40s vertical. First off, it's hard to find someone that even tests because they usually just get worse and they don't want to face the truth of their vertical getting worse. But find an athlete that tests frequently that's in the high 40s that is able to continue improving. And one of the biggest reasons those athletes don't improve is because they do the same type of training. There was some kind of training they did when they were younger and it worked. And because it worked, they saw that type of training as law and it's the best way to train. And they kept doing that even till, you know, their late 20s, 30s, whatever. And they think it's still the best way to train, but it's not. They're not using variety. They're not adding that into their training.
You know, it's so funny too. I think I've heard this multiple times from world-class coaches like Dan or Boo or Mike. The later you are in your career, the more specific the stuff you can do is, because you're closer to your genetic potential, right? You're closer to diminishing returns and you need more specificity to improve. You need more high intensity specific stimuli to get better. And in your case, it's kind of funny. We haven't done a lot of things that are on paper more intense and more specific, specifically plyos. We don't do a lot of plyos. And the reason why is because, and I'm sure the same argument he just made, I'm sure some coaches would be like, well, replace the word plyometrics in there. You know what I mean? Like, just have a logical progression with plyometrics, where your RSI goes up by 0.05 and you'll jump higher, or whatever, you'll hit 51, 52. Like, it's all of that. It's not just one thing. It's a ton of different moving pieces that we're always manipulating. And the other thing that came to mind while you were kind of talking is, if it were that simple, I don't think Isaiah and I would be successful as coaches, and we definitely wouldn't be interested in it. I don't even think we would care, because it would be like the easiest equation ever if it were that simple. We'd just be like, oh, well,
Clean jump.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't have a career doing this if it were that simple, because if it were that easy to plug and play, then everyone would have a 51-inch vertical. And that's not the case. Or, okay, let's say they'd have upper 40s. That's just not the case. It's not that simple. There are guys at the gym that do that all the time. That's their whole program, is power, power building, essentially.
Power jumping,
athletes,
Olympic jumping.
Yeah. And it's just not,
Olympic power jumping, squat, clean jump.
My dog is whining like crazy right now. She's like, I really want to go potty, so I gotta go. But she's so cute. I have to show everyone my dog for the new year. This is for me. This isn't for you guys. This is for me.
The TLDR, look up the laws of adaptation, and it'll answer your question.
Okay, but we do appreciate your question, and I know we came off as like very argumentative, but it's just, we're very passionate about this, and I think that for us, it's like, how dare you ask if it's that simple, you peasant?
No, I like comments like this. This video even came to be because I was reading comments and I was just genuinely curious. I was like, John, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and I was like, well, and I get impassioned by these things.
One more really quick point that I want to make. A lot of people attribute success in jumping to what they did the month prior, when you really have to look at the last 3 to 6 to 12 month period.
Could be 24 months.
For us, and we're actually using this information. I jump high after I do high volume and high intensity work, like back to back. That tends to peak my vertical really well, but it's usually followed by a lot of time of doing other stuff. And we're using that information. Like, we literally built a plan. By the time we get to dunk camp, we're gonna go. What is it? We're doing these isometrics, then eccentrics, and then we're gonna go back to back with volume intensity.
Yeah, then it's All-Star weekend. So we're gonna have a slight deload. We may touch on concentric components. We'll see how he jumps. It's always collecting data. I tell Donovan this. I think it's probably one of the biggest lessons Donovan took away from early on. I was like, look, dude, you're not always gonna jump your highest, but it doesn't mean you're a worse athlete, and you're not always going to perform your best. All it is data. So we're collecting data. And when Isaiah goes to All-Star weekend, we're collecting data. So we're in that constant loop of test, retest, test, retest, test, retest, or test, analyze, retest. That's like the loop that we're in, is that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes us really good coaches. And we're always willing to learn and accept criticism, or that we might be wrong. I don't think you can't attach your ego to these things. If you attach your ego to these things, you're not going to be willing to test and experiment. So yeah, but thank you guys for listening. Happy New Year. I hope all of you guys have a great holiday. If you guys had to work today, I'm sorry. Tell your boss that it's important that you work because your entire life purpose is to increase stockholder value. And I just want you guys to know that. So keep trucking along. No, I'm just kidding. That's kind of terrible to say to you guys. But we do appreciate you guys. And yeah, go to THPstrength.com if you want to get coached by us. And
final day to get 40% off.
Yeah,
I think it's today. Actually, real quick, I'm gonna give you guys the exact day. Tomorrow, it's the last day. Good luck.
All right, I will see you guys in the new year. See you next year.